think Ramattra is going to be meta. Now, this is not a statement, it's just a prediction, but his buffs were insane, as well as a ton of other changes, and now that I've really let them sink in, I've played the game myself a little bit more, here are my thoughts. Alright, so yesterday I covered the patch notes quite late. I didn't really know. The retail patch notes came out and I just covered them an hour later. I didn't know that like streamers got the patch notes early and they've been out for 4 hours and people have been playing them. So I was a little bit unaware there was even an interview that happened with Flats, but I watched the entire like 40-minute video. I got myself up to speed and then I hopped into Overwatch itself, played around with a couple things. Now, I didn't buy the battle pass. I didn't really want to support that whole thing, but you can play Ramattra in custom games, and there is a hardcore deathmatch which reduces his health and disables 2 of his abilities. But other than the shield, what it really lets me test out is the movement speed change. I was playing Ramattra in hardcore deathmatch for a little while to test him out and practice him even without owning him, and I want to right off the bat say that the movement speed buff is ridiculous. It is extraordinarily strong in the best way possible. It makes Ramattra fun to play, and it is a little bit heartbreaking because it's tempting me to buy him, but I'm going to hold out and unlock him for free in the battle pass like a good Samaritan. I'm just kidding. If you buy the battle pass, I'm not judging. I'm just joking. But on a serious note, it does make him way more desirable. It makes him way stronger, and it's just in time to drop him in ranked, right? So basically season 2 is out for like a week and a bit, and bam, we had this huge change, this huge patch, and it is honestly going to change the meta. It is legitimately. The only reason it won't shift it as hard is because they weren't able to make the Roadhog buffs in time. Now, I need to come out and apologize. I ripped at Blizzard yesterday for not nerfing Roadhog or communicating. And the truth is, it's because you have to understand, from my perspective, I control F'd and I searched within that retail notes what happened to Roadhog, and he wasn't there. And it's a little bit okay, I might get hate. It's a little bit unfair for me to quote unquote expect to know because of an interview in another YouTuber's video, right? Like, I wouldn't expect you to know everything about Overwatch thanks to my videos or someone else's videos. It should really be pushed by Blizzard. So in those retail patch notes, I still believe they should have put a note. We couldn't make the Roadhog in time. We're looking to nerf him. We're looking to rework him. You'll see that more when we're back from break in January. That still should have been in the retail patch notes themselves, not just stuffed away somewhere hard to see for most people. Again, I'm just, maybe you guys are going to hate me again, but I'm going to defend my point a little bit there because in the end, from an average player, I'm going to read the patch notes, I'm going to talk. I'm going to play the game, I'm going to talk, right? That's how most people who are, like, if someone's a grandmaster on PlayStation 5, okay? They're still as much of a player as someone else, they're most likely going to get that info from the patch notes, right? So I'd like to see everything they do, like tweet, talk with other creators, also be included in a more public scenario from themselves. I think that will help the whole Blizzard communication because they are communicating more. So that's the one thing I want to mention before we get into some of the other changes and how I feel about them, is that Blizzard's communication is up like crazy and they're doing fantastic with it. I need to applaud them for that. I love the communication. Another thing is, yesterday I also talked a little bit about the, of course, Doomfist changes, and I thought that they were decent tweaks, and I'm glad I wasn't the only one. When I watched back Flats' video, who talked to Emong and a bunch of other players who are way better than me, they all thought, oh, these are good changes to Doomfist. So I'm glad that my first reaction made sense. However, what ended up happening is that 1 second boost on his punch made him feel, 1, more sluggish. It threw off his combos quite a lot. And 2, the second change, which makes him less tanky by dealing damage to increase his own health, makes his survivability a lot trickier, especially as a tank who's all about infiltrating and jumping into the backline. So I do understand why some people feel the Doomfist nerfs were too much. Now, as I was playing him, I didn't feel he was worse than pre-buff or anything, but I do think the nerfs may have gone a little bit too far. Now, my suggestion would maybe just to reset his punch back to 3 so he can keep punching away a little bit more. I think the best change, the best nerf in the patch, in my opinion, was actually the nerf to when he blocks and his charged punch, right? He needs to block more damage before getting that empowered punch. That was great because it was a little bit too quick. If the teammates just actually shot at him, bada bing, bada boom, he got that empowered punch. So the Doomfist nerfs went too far, but maybe not extraordinarily too far, just a little too far. And Doomfist is one of those heroes which is those minor tweaks. That 1 extra second on the punch does actually make him feel quite a lot more sluggish and harder to combo with. So it's crazy, but just that 1 second made a huge difference. And I want to emphasize this. The small changes make a much bigger difference than even I admit to have predicted. Like, for example, Tracer. At 5 damage, they noticed she was too weak. At 6 damage, they saw statistically on the back end in 1 week, she flew through the charts. She just got way better. With 1 extra damage, she flew through the charts. They're hoping 5.5 in the middle will make her good. Now, only time will tell, but I'm using it as an example to show how sensitive changes can truly be. Another thing that I don't know if it's not really talked about, but luckily a lot of players seem to have agreed with me after I did some digging and listening to other public opinions, is that the Orisa buff is a little bit odd still. I think that ult is going to be insane now that it just penetrates through shields upon landing. I think she was already strong. Just overall buffing her is a little bit odd, especially because the biggest reason for the buff, according to that little interview, is because she's a good counter to Roadhog. So it's kind of a direct nerf to him by buffing Orisa, but there's some other consequences with other heroes and playstyles. And not to mention, does that mean they'll look to maybe nerf her in the mid-season? Because in the mid-season coming in January, they said that they are looking to not only nerf Roadhog substantially, but basically remove his one shot where it's way weaker and kind of like a light, or he kind of called it a light rework or a minor rework to Roadhog, and it's going to make him a lot weaker. That's basically what he said. Like in the interview, basically Roadhog's going to get way weaker. Does that mean Orisa then gets nerfed at that time? You know what I mean? Like, is this the whole Genji situation coming up again? I'm definitely happy we're patching faster, but I'm just curious what the outlook is. But regardless, there is another huge change that is just, well, again, I mentioned it yesterday, but the changes to Ana are substantial. I don't know why in my head when I was reading the patch notes yesterday, I missed that it says damage and healing. I think I read it out loud, but in my head I was just thinking about the healing. I was just thinking about that 5 extra per shot healing buff, which is huge. It's one of the biggest things. They even mentioned that they have to keep an eye on it because buffing healing can be extremely finicky. But also, yeah, she 2 shots Tracer now. Just bam, bam, 2 shots, you're dead from an Ana primary fire, which is huge, right? So that Ana buff is extraordinarily substantial. Now, it's the only support that really got buffed, but definitely not the last support, of course, that's going to be buffed. I think some Brig reworks or changes are going to come to the mid-season. That one isn't confirmed, but what is confirmed is Junker Queen changes. In the interview, they mentioned that the changes are spicy. That's what he said, spicy. I don't know if that's a little rework to an ability or what they're gonna do, but spicy usually means, at least how I'm taking it, it's not just a numbers tweak, at least not a straight numbers tweak. Maybe it's an effect tweak, like Junker Queen's knife now debuffs this, or you know what I mean, maybe anti-heals this, or whatever it may be, you know what I mean. That's usually what I understand when they say spicy. It's a curveball, something we don't expect, and it's kind of funny because it means that 1.5 weeks into season 2 we get a complete meta change. The meta literally flips on its head with this balance change, and we can expect in January, and it could have been earlier, just that they're going on break, in January another flip might happen because nerfing Roadhog and buffing Junker Queen will shift the meta. Okay, that's the one thing. Maybe you disagree, but the meta is a lot more sensitive now that there's one tank. It means the one tank that switches might change the team comp. Ramattra coming into ranked with those movement speed buffs will mean that Lucio stays very prominent since he goes very well with Ramattra. And it's like that tank, the tank really does shift the meta. And by patching the tanks really more than any other freaking hero or category, you're changing up the meta quite aggressively quite often. Now, I'm not very upset. I think it's fun. Personally, I have fun doing it. But again, I think the Ramattra meta is here. I am making a prediction, not a fact, not a statement. I'm making a prediction that we see a lot of Ramattra moving forward. And the last thing I want to cover is actually the fact that they also mentioned that they basically fix something on the backend system that helps initiate and deploy hotfixes a lot quicker. So Flats, bless his soul, actually asked them directly, will we have another situation in which, let's say, Sojin was very problematic for far too long and it was pretty draining on players. People were unhappy. I was unhappy. Most people were unhappy. And the answer was quite satisfying. We should be able to now expect faster patches. They mentioned that this 1.5 week was extraordinarily fast because they're about to go on leave and they didn't want to leave the game in a bad state. So that's good on them. However, I wouldn't expect 1.5 week patches to be normal, and that kind of makes sense. I would say 2 to 3 weeks is fast enough without completely game breaking stuff, since, you know, collecting data and making changes off of data does matter. The more data they have, the better. I mean, Ramattra didn't even get to hit ranked and now he's going to be buffed, right? So again, I'm happy that it's faster. There's a little bit more of a sweet spot to hit, but I'd prefer too early than too late.